In just the 8 years since we started the Earth Organization, it's a point of pride for us that our research has uncovered thoroughly proven solutions that are so fundamental as to have the capability of addressing and effectively handling many of the largest environmental situations on the planet. From swift and thorough oil spill cleanup, to toxic waste site cleanup, to effective and rapid remediation of polluted waters, there are solutions which exist that are economical and practical, but they've not been adequately implemented and are not broadly known. Lawrence often gave the example that if you were on the Titanic and you had hit the iceberg, there are 1,000 things that you could do on that ship to make it better. I put that in quotes, make it better. You could fix the engine. You could threaten to sue the captain. You could create a beautiful new menu for the passengers. You could hold hands and sing. But if you're not addressing and handling the hole in the hull, all the rest is for naught. That ship is going down. And so in any situation that the Earth Organization takes on, through the application of scientific principles, we first isolate what the hole in the hull is and focus our attention and our resources on that. And by so doing, we can effectively and relatively swiftly turn around a deteriorating condition. Senegalese poet and naturalist Baba Dioum said, "In the end, we will protect only what we love. We will love only what we understand. We will understand only what we are taught." When one looks at what is happening environmentally around the planet and research to find the one situation that if left unhandled will just continue to cause it to decay, in other words, the hole in the hull, it is easy to isolate the underlying cause as a lack of education, a missing awareness of the importance of the long-term survival of our natural heritage and how it plays a vital role in the survival of every single one of us, and a lack of knowledge regarding how to operate successfully within an economy to achieve prosperity without destroying the wildlife in the environment upon which that prosperity in some measure depends. And so Lawrence gave us the task that whatever campaigns we take on, whatever else we are doing, we're working to educate the public, the government, corporate leaders, and decision makers about real and effective solutions that, if implemented, will take into account every aspect of a problem, including contributing to a prosperous economy, benefiting commerce and industry, the health and survival of the local people, as well as the enhancement and protection of the plant and animal kingdoms and the environment. Tonight, the executive staff of the Earth Organization wish to honor Lawrence's extraordinary contributions to conservation. It's important to us that it's known that it is his vision that we're dedicated to achieving and his legacy that we're carrying forward. And thus we're announcing that we've decided to include his name in the name of his organization. From tonight, we will now be known as the Lawrence Anthony Earth Organization.
To start off with, just probably one of your fondest memories of Lawrence?
I think the memory that sticks with me most is when the elephant broke out the first time. Lawrence was standing on the road, and I'll never forget this. There were about 20 or 30 guys that arrived from nowhere with rifles, ready to come and shoot the elephant. Even the authorities wanted to get rid of the elephant. Lawrence was had thrown everything into the game reserve, but he refused to do it. I looked at this guy and I realized, here's a man with purpose. Here's a man who's got the minerals to go after that purpose. And that really has really stuck with me.
Lawrence, on his first meeting with Andy, was asking Andy to invest in his ventures in South Africa. And Andy said, well, how do you see it going, Lawrence? And he said, well, you give us money, Andy, at Prime. And Andy replied, and Lawrence, what's Prime? And I kid you not, Lawrence's reply was, Andy, Prime is the rate that a bank lends money. To which Andy replied, Lawrence, I know what prime means. I want to know, what is the prime rate in South Africa?
We were working with the Miss Earth organization in Johannesburg, and we had arranged a walk around the zoo to raise awareness of wildlife in war zones. And when Dylan and Jason found out that we were working with the Miss Earth, they rapidly packed their suitcases and joined us, much to my surprise. And the event started off with Lawrence lining up the girls on either side and then pointing to Jason and saying, he's the one that's single. But on a more emotional note, when we were standing talking and it was Lawrence's turn to do his speech, we were standing in front of the elephant enclosure, and Lawrence was at the podium, and we had a whole host of people in front of him. And when he started talking, the elephant in the enclosure came up and stood and looked over his shoulder, obviously in his enclosure, but he stood there and appeared to listen to the entire speech. And then when Lawrence had completed his talk, and he hadn't been aware of this actually, he just delivered his speech. When Lawrence finished, the elephant turned and walked away.
The other thing that I found with Lawrence is that no matter how normal things seem at a time, eventually it turns into some sort of bizarre, surreal, chaotic situation. Something that when you just stand and you think about where you are and what's happened, it just seems insane. And I remember flying on a C-130 from Kuwait through to Baghdad and hitching a ride through to this Al Rashid hotel, which is where Lawrence had said he was living. And I was in a Tula Tula Game Ranger outfit in the middle of a war zone with lovely epaulets, and I had a bag that Francois had given me that had some wine in it, and I had a dart gun and another box and a backpack. And we got into this hotel, and I said, well, where's Lawrence? And they said, oh, the zoo guy, yeah, he's somewhere, you know. He said he lives up on room 7, floor 7. So I walked up the engineers had blown out the lifts accidentally. So we had to walk up this dark sort of stairwell up to the 7th floor, and it's all dusty, and you get in and it smells like guys have been using toilets that haven't been flushed for a long time. But it's amazing. We walked into room 720. I remember very clearly looking out the window there, and there was just this sort of skyline of the Al Zahra Park and uncompleted mosques, and it looked very Disney-like, and I couldn't figure out where I was going to go from here. I had no idea how to find Lawrence. And I sat there for a while, and eventually I just heard that laugh. And anybody who's known Lawrence knows that he's got a hell of a laugh. It just came out, and even through to the 7th floor, and I looked over the edge there, and there was Lawrence strolling off to this empty pool. There was one shower working outside that pool, and everybody in the entire hotel used it, all the soldiers. And there was hairy, naked, big Lawrence standing there, and that was one of those moments where I remember thinking, I'm sitting in a hotel in Baghdad looking at hairy Lawrence, completely naked, showering, and it was the start of a bizarre year. But you go from being completely scared to seeing something like that, and it changes your entire mood.
I used to get these phone calls at 4 in the morning saying, absolutely perfect, Graham, but. And the but was longer than the whole bloody book. So anyway, we finished it somehow. And the first book I wrote with him was Babylon's Ark. And, with Babylon's Ark, we kind of didn't know where we were going. The first draft was some sort of gonzo journalism in the middle of Iraq, little old us in nowhere type thing. And actually, that's when I met Brendan and Farah was there, which is great. We sent it to publishers who rightly laughed at it. So we rewrote it. And this time I rewrote it as a kind of adventure story, which it actually was. And then a publisher was interested, but said, hey, I want this in the first person. So we rewrote the thing for the 3rd time, with Lawrence in the first person. The problem was that everything in the other books that Lawrence said, hey, great, Graham, geez, what a good quote, suddenly had Lawrence said. And I said, I didn't actually say it like that. So we had to rewrite the whole thing how Lawrence said it. And then Lawrence said, but what about if the zookeeper, if I didn't say it like that, what about old Husham, the zookeeper, maybe he didn't say it like that. So I said, Lawrence, let them write their own bleeping book themselves then. Anyway, we got it out, and it was great, and those phone calls at 4 o'clock, which are even worse because we're 2 hours behind in England. And I know Lawrence had been drinking coffee that, I put it somewhere in the book, strong enough to float a bullet, and it was. And I just kind of know that I dreaded them. And Terry, my wife, would pick them up and say, it's Lawrence. I said, yes. But it was so focused. It was so good, man. It was a real privilege working to him. And wow, man, I miss the guy, man. I really do.